Hi, this is my review of Ravenloft Domains of Dread. This is the second edition of the Ravenloft campaign setting. It's supposed to be used with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but you can use it with other rules set. It's easy to adapt it to earlier editions or newer editions such as 3.0 or 3.5. And well, this book is actually quite sturdy. The cover is pretty tough, and the quality of the paper is good, but it's starting to get a bit yellowy in some parts. The overall graphic design is great. It expresses that, I don't know, that feeling of gothic decadence, of mausoleums and all sorts of creepy stuff. There are a lot of maps, some general maps and some are more specific of the different domains. And you also get a lot of cool illustrations of the different Dark Lords. The entire book is filled with cool illustrations and charts, all sorts of things. This is another cool chart. And there are also many like quotes and fragments of paragraphs of text, different famous books and proverbs that have to do with gothic things, with vengeance and all sorts of moody and bleak things. And well, let's get started. This is actually one of my favorite campaign settings. I still use it whenever I can. This and Forgotten Realms, but that's another story. So, well, the book gives you everything you need to know on how to run adventures here in the demi-plane of Dread. The place where everything takes place is a sort of like a planar prison where all the bad things from different planes of existence and realms gather there. It feels kind of like a sinkhole, or a sort of like, yeah, like a vortex where everything bad gathers there, and there is no way to get out of there, or at least no obvious or simple way. And so there is a lot of speculation about the essence or the nature of the domain of the demi-plane of Dread, because some think that the plane is actually a force of justice that serves as a prison to keep all the bad people and creatures away from other planes. But there are other theories that maybe that say that maybe the demi-plane of Dread is a very bad power, a power of darkness and evil that is gathering forces to carry out some horrible invasion of other planes. They actually they never clear out the mystery, they never give you a straight answer of what the demi-plane of Dread is. And they leave that as a mystery, or a sort of like a meta plot for the characters to figure out. Or maybe they won't figure it out at all. They will participate in different adventures, solving other mysteries and dealing with other problems, and they will never understand the nature of the demi-plane of Dread. And as I was saying, this is a place where all the villains gather, and they end up as Dark Lords, as rulers of different regions and pocket dimensions. And all those places, those regions, have people and animals, general inhabitants of all kinds, and they are all under the rulership of one of these Dark Lords. Look, there's another creepy illustration here. And Ravenloft is teeming with the undead. It kind of feels like an undead hell. It's not certain, not like the hell or like the shadow plane, but it houses so many undead and curses and dark, terrible things that it kind of feels like a very bad place to be in. You get if your player character will always be in a constant sense of paranoia and not knowing what will happen next. And each Dark Lord, in most cases, is like he or she is like a tribute to famous villains and monsters from different sources. For example, you get one of the Dark Lords. Oh, sorry, there are going to be some spoilers in this review. This is Adam, and he's a flesh golem, but he's pretty much the Frankenstein monster. Even his creator is modeled after Victor Frankenstein. There are other Dark Lords that serve as tributes to classic horror films and monsters. For example, perhaps the most famous one, Strad von Zarovich, which is like Count Dracula, but Dungeons and Dragons style. Look, here he is. He, I've seen him in different illustrations, looking in different ways. I've seen him looking like a sort of like an elvish character, and I've seen him like you saw it right now, like Bela Lugosi. So it's a character that has changed with every edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And there are many other Dark Lords, and each one of them has great power. They are even able to close their borders to their domains. Maybe they will call upon mists that simply won't allow you to live out of a certain domain. You will try to escape this domain, but you will get lost in the mist and you will return to the point where you started from. Other times they are able to call upon hundreds and hundreds of undead to stop you from leaving the domain. And it's an interesting relation or bond between the Dark Lord and his or her domain, because he's kind of like the protector of his region, but in a way as somebody would protect cattle just to slaughter them later on. And sometimes the player characters will actually have to deal or negotiate with the Dark Lords. They can certainly fight against them, but it's going to be pretty tough to beat them. They have a lot of power. Some of them are above 20 level, around the epic level, maybe even demigods or god tier. So it's very hard to beat them with just lower level characters. And all these domains are detailed in a very complete way. You have a lot of adventure seats and a lot of problems to solve. Sometimes it features the Dark Lord himself. You have to stop him from doing this nefarious deed or enslaving someone, etc. But other times you will have to work in like a cooperation with the Dark Lord to stop some greater threat. But despite all their powers, the Dark Lords are cursed. They are constantly frustrated in their attempts to gain something or do something that they long for before becoming a Dark Lord. For example, maybe a Dark Lord is in love with a certain person, but he never gets his way of reaching that person or winning the affection of that person. Other Dark Lords are after a certain object or just trying to escape the demiplane of dread, and they never achieve it, and as if the demiplane of dread is mocking them and taunting them. Other Dark Lords are under the constant torture of transformation or shapeshift. Some of them change into ghosts even if they don't like it, or some others are actually good people, but they have a split personality, kind of like Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it's pretty interesting. You get a lot of interesting things here to create adventures and run entire campaigns. The book also tells you a lot of elements tells you how to modify different elements such as classes, spells to fit into the gameplane of Dread, because the spells are going to work very differently because this is a domain of darkness and dread. So if you start using spells related to necromancy, you're going to get very powerful results, but also unpredictable results. And spells related to healing and protection will also be affected. Most of the spells that have something to do with good or righteousness or protection are at a disadvantage in this place. And some classes are at a huge disadvantage. For example, the Paladin class, because the Paladin is such a paragon of light and justice. He is always calling attention to himself that the Dark Lords always know where a Paladin is in their domain, and if he brings out some type of weapon, like for example the Holy Defender, then they are even calling more and more attention to themselves. So it's pretty hard to die as a Paladin in this place. Luckily, there are more classes to choose from. There are some classes that are specific to the Domains of Dread. For example, there's the Anchorite, which is a cleric of Ezra, and he's pretty cool. My players always love to have at least one Anchorite because he's a cleric that uses swords and has some other abilities related to the Demiplane of Dread. There are also Elementalists, and they're pretty much just wizards with an elemental theme. They use fire, wind, or earth in their attacks and powers. There's also Gypsies, who are very skilled in knife fighting and also have some spells. And there's the Arcanist, who feels kind of like a Lovecraftian caster. He's like a scholar who reads all these forbidden books of knowledge and gains all sorts of dark powers. And one very interesting character, in my opinion, is the Avenger. The Avenger is kind of like a fighter, but he's obsessed with a particular enemy. So whenever he fights somebody related to that enemy or who just reminds him of that enemy, he's going to get more hit points. He's going to know exactly where to go if he's chasing them, kind of like a hound dog. And he's also going to, let's see, he's going to get other bonuses related to that particular enemy. So that's pretty useful that you have all these choices when it comes to character classes, so you get a small advantage in this horrible Demiplane of Dread. You also get a lot of information in this book about how to use different races and classes in a particular region and how they are they integrate with society in Ravenloft, in the Demiplane of Dread. And you also get fear and horror checks and madness checks, and these may result in short-term or long-term effects. So for example, madness is pretty bad. It's usually permanent and you may lose a character to it. And fear has to do with all those scares that happen in an instant. Maybe a corpse drops from the ceiling, or a horrible monster appears, and your character needs to make a check, or he's going to become unnerved and have different penalties. And horror is a bit more more subtle, but at the same time more long term. So it has to do with something, with seeing the not so obvious things of dread. Maybe you're entering a cavern or a dungeon, and you start seeing little bits of bones and entrails on the floor, on the ground, and you're going to have to make a check because that's getting your character really, really nervous. In contrast to fear, that is just like, oh, I scare you. And so your character needs to keep track of these different penalties and ailments. And if you're not careful, your character may end up subjected to the dark influences of the Demiplane of Dread. For example, maybe your character starts killing with no remorse, and there's a possibility you may end up as a villain or maybe a Dark Lord, because the corrupting influences of Ravenloft make everything just worse than it actually is. So if you're playing in the Forgotten Realms or maybe in Greyhawk, and those places you just kill and loot and act really aggressive, here in Ravenloft, if you start acting like that, there's a pretty good chance your character will turn evil. So it's actually a pretty hard setting for the player characters. They have to fight these dark powers, but they can't do it in a way that they become the monsters they are fighting. This book is just amazing. I think the only thing that it lacks is that they should have included some monsters. You have to buy the bestiaries separately. There are 3 bestiaries, I think, or more. That's not counting the Van Richten guides for vampires and ghosts, etc. It's a pretty good book if you want a campaign setting that challenges the players, because quite frankly everything is against them here in Ravenloft. So it actually gets my highest recommendation if you don't mind having to buy different monsters in separate books. And well, I hope this review helps you decide if Ravenloft is for you or not. This book is pretty old, but it's easy to get it at eBay, or I think I saw it on Amazon at a decent price once. So, well, thanks for watching my video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.